Cool. Yeah, so we're going to launch into our next panel fairly soon. Thank you all for attending. Thank you again to everyone that's watching online as well. Very briefly, of course, you're encouraged to share what you're seeing here on social media. We're using the hashtag PGConnects. Actually, as when I introduced myself early in the morning, it was a slightly quieter room. I'm your compere for the morning, Will Freeman, games journalist and writes for games and does things in games, and is good at kind of awkward filling time as panels assemble on stage. So it's a bit bold of me to say I'm good at awkward filling time. Anyway, they are all here. I'm not going to steal the thunder of the moderator of the panel by introducing everyone, so I will and you've all heard enough from me already. So, Marion Finnegan, Amazon Web Services, over to you. And let's give them a warm round of applause to welcome them.
Thank you. Do we have to make up for the lost 5 minutes?
No, I think we can let that slip over now.
Right, good. Well, good for us, good for the panel here. Amazing. Right, welcome everyone, and thanks for having us. My name is Marion Finnegan. I'm Senior Business Development Manager for AWS Game Tech, and I have the absolute honor to host this panel today. With me on stage, I've got 4 amazing individuals. I'm going to let them introduce themselves in a minute, and what we're going to be discussing is, whether the downloads are coming to an end and whether cloud gaming is conquering the world. So to kick this off, I'd like to give, as I said, the panel the opportunity to introduce themselves, and I'd like you guys to kind of not only state your name and the company, but also say a little bit about, what you do, what your company is doing, and give our audience here a little bit of an idea of who you actually are.
Sure thing.
Yeah, go on.
Hello, everyone. I'm James Dobrowski. I'm the managing director of a company called Sharkmob London. We're a relatively new company, about 18 months old, looking to grow into a pretty large AAA studio over the next few years. Right now, we're a team of about 50 people, and we're heavily focused on AAA gaming and incredibly heavily focused on multiplayer and online gaming, which makes cloud a very relevant topic to what we're doing at the moment.
I'm Derk de Geus from Paladin Studios, based in the Netherlands. We create all kinds of games, and most recently we launched Cut the Rope Remastered on Apple Arcade. So super happy with Apple Arcade and subscriptions and that kind of stuff. So it ties in quite nicely with the broader trend of cloud gaming, subscriptions, and all that kind of stuff. So. Oh, yeah.
Hello, I'm Simon Meek. I'm an independent games developer, been around for 15 plus years. Recently launched a new studio called Stacking Chairs. What's interesting about that, and relevant for the panel, I suppose, is that it's creating third-person video game experiences which contain stories which are entirely aligned to the sort of audience opportunity which comes with on-demand gaming.
Hi everyone, my name's Haslam. I've been in the games industry for about 14 years now. My background is mostly in local multiplayer games, but I'm now exploring how to kind of bring those online. I work for a company called Snapfinger Click. We're an indie dev, and we make games that can be played both in the living room but also online over Twitch, with the Twitch chat joining in.
Awesome. My name is Farley. I am CEO of Firestoke. We are an almost brand new indie games publisher. Our focus is PC and console games. In a prior life, I also founded a live ops and analytics platform called Chili Connect. So come from mobile, come from very much a cloud-based technology platform background. I'm now very excited in terms of the potentials for cloud gaming to impact indie games, not just AAA.
Awesome, thank you very much. Wow, we're off to a great start, I'd say. So I'm going to make the first question a really, really easy one. What is the definition, what is your definition of cloud gaming? Whoever wants to go first.
I'm happy to jump in here. So I don't think it's particularly clear cut, because I have 2 definitions of cloud gaming, depending on what perspective I'm looking at cloud gaming from. From a developer perspective, I often think of cloud gaming as those times in development where I'm using cloud as part of my hosting infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And that's a really interesting topic, because there's a lot of cool things I think you can do when you're using cloud as part of your hosting infrastructure that you can't do using more traditional models. Then looking at it from a completely different perspective, cloud computing can be seen from the consumer perspective of technologies like Stadia, where we are using cloud as a streaming service of content to our consumers. So yeah, I think there's two perspectives to look at it, and I expect we're going to end up talking about both of them as we chat this morning.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really interesting point, because I think when I speak to like our players and consumers, I think in their mind it's OnLive, it's Gaikai, it's PlayStation Now, it's Stadia. It is very much like cloud streaming, but I think a big part of cloud gaming that doesn't really get talked about quite so much is things like I don't know, where you're doing maybe your physics computation on the cloud rather than actually on the client device, and I think that's equally as interesting and as important as the streaming part.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for me, it's very simple. It's just that you're playing a game that's not physically running on the device that you're using, and it's a seamless experience that it doesn't matter what device you use, you can access the same experience from it.
Yeah, I think I'm similarly aligned. I think when I think about cloud gaming, I definitely think about the sort of on-demand nature of gaming. Also, that probably comes hand in hand with a sort of more subscription model in terms of purchasing. And I think those two things, I think cloud gaming brings about, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, at length, a sort of a change in audience, maybe a new audience, or maybe even a sort of jolt to the lost audiences of disenfranchised and lapsed gamers as well.
I agree with all of the above, basically. Maybe adding one thing is that for me, the big sort of underlying change is the business model of subscriptions. Subscriptions, instead of paying to own something, you basically subscribe to it. I think that is one aspect.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think the audience here probably would agree with all of the definitions that you've given. But I think it's important for us to have that conversation, because people talk to you about cloud gaming, and then you realize midway conversations like, hold on a second, you mean subscriptions, and you actually mean the not downloading part. So good to have that out of the way. We're going to be covering all of this in some shape or form. Let's look a little bit at the market, right? Rumors say that Stadia is shifting away from gaming, but at the same time, Nintendo is announcing their Switch cloud gaming feature. There is mixed messages out there, and I'm just curious, I think what we can agree on that cloud gaming isn't quite mainstream yet, but I'd like to get your take on why that is. Joanna?
Yeah, I'll take that one. I think that it's been interesting to see that a lot of the, Stadia came along, for example, and really focused on AAA. And I thought that was interesting in the sense that a lot of AAA gamers are already got their own setup. They're already used to playing games in a specific way. So it's quite a hard market to target, because you're convincing them to leave behind what they're used to and sign up to this new system. And it's the amazing thing about cloud gaming is the experience that you can get on it without having the hardware. And I think that's such a big selling point of it that hasn't quite come through to the mainstream yet. Because whenever I show cloud gaming to my non-gamer friends and family, they're just completely blown away that they can access this AAA experience just in a browser. It's really mind-blowing to them. So I really feel like it's not quite there yet, and there is obviously some barriers, but once we get to a point where we can target that mainstream audience, and maybe with games that are a bit more accessible to them. So if you look at, you remember how the Wii became this thing that invaded everybody's living rooms. We can reach that audience. We've done it before, and we kind of need to do it again. And I think we need to focus on games, more indie games, more accessible games, more local multiplayer games, those kind of things that will bring in that bigger audience and show them what they're missing out on, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Simon?
Yeah, sort of agree. I mean, it's interesting to ask whether actually there is an audience demand at the moment, in the same way as was there an audience demand when we shifted to on-demand in music or on-demand in film, because the content's there. But what's quite interesting is the opportunity that happens after the shift. And I think, so I think that's probably why it's not mass market, because we need to make it happen rather than it being sort of us demanding to a screaming audience demand in the first instance.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really key point. It's almost kind of trying to solve a problem that doesn't really quite exist at the moment. And I think, anecdotally, from my own personal experience as a gamer, as a consumer, the only time that I've really needed streaming cloud gaming was playing Microsoft Flight Sim. And it's and I live quite rurally, so I don't have a brilliant internet connection. And I literally had to download that game overnight. And pretty much every time I sit down to play Microsoft Flight Sim, I need to do a new update, and it takes 3 or 4 hours. And by the time it's updated, I've kind of moved on, I'm doing something else, right? And I think that accessibility is probably one of the kind of the major things that cloud gaming, certainly the streaming part of it, brings to the table. At that point, if I had an option to play via streaming, I would have done it instantly. Press that button, I'm in. So I think that's the only point at which there's a real friction at the moment for me personally as a gamer. I think the points everyone else has made around the fact that our consumers have bought in. I mean, they paid £500 for a console, which sits underneath their TV screen. I'm now of a generation of gamers that remembers buying games on DVDs and Blu-rays and having physical hardware. We've moved to digital downloads. That's a major step. It's only happened in the last 10 years. And now we're moving away from downloads towards on-demand and streaming. These are major steps. And I think also, the consumers, our audience, our players, aren't there yet. And I don't think we've given them a compelling proposition yet.
I do think one of the issues with previous offerings has been that, in many ways, content is king, as was mentioned. I think there was probably quite a lot of skepticism in the market about subscription services for gaming in general, and then Game Pass came along with its full Microsoft back catalogue dating back to centuries ago, and it was a very attractive consumer proposition. You're not paying £40 a game, you're paying £12 a month, and you get everything. I think Stadia didn't have enough content to be successful. And I think, as we've been saying, there were a number of barriers to entry. You still needed a device. You needed a reliable internet connection. And I think for anybody who lives in London knows we don't still have a particularly reliable internet connection in the UK. But I think once those barrier to entries are dropped, and there's no reason why they can't be over the next few years, we will see success. But it will, in my opinion, come from somebody who has enough of a back catalogue of ready accessible content that they can put an offering out there that makes people sit up and take notice. And before we know it, just like we're with Netflix and Prime, we'll be in there using it, and it will be a mainstream thing.
Well, you guys are actually already running away with the whole panel, because my next question would have been, what kind of possibilities and opportunities do we see with cloud gaming coming up? But I think there were a few things that we touched on when we had this conversation before. Sorry to say, this is a spoiler. But Derk, you talked about, visibility for indies, and I think, Joanna, we had a little bit of conversation about Twitch and stuff. So I'd like you guys to elaborate a little bit on this.
Yeah, This ties in mostly to the subscription model, but I think the opportunity there for independent developers is that these platforms will need content, so that's a huge opportunity for any content creator creating high quality premium games to really just do that and keep doing it. And my hope is that it's not going to be just one or two platforms that have this huge catalog. They will be there, that's the mainstream. But also I hope that there will be a number of niche platforms that have a very specific subset of content that they cater to. If you can then create content that fits that audience, then I think there's a lot of room for niche games and really targeted content, basically. Yeah. This is a huge opportunity.
Yeah, totally. Joanna, you doing stuff with Twitch specifically. What opportunities do you see for cloud gaming?
Well, the interesting thing about Twitch is that it's a real mixture of media, because you've got people just passively consuming, you've got people engaging just through chatting, and then what we do at Snapping a Click is we've got interactive games, so people can actually join in and play them. And what we've noticed about Twitch is that there are limitations to it. You can't do like a first-person shooter and have the viewers join in a kind of meaningful way, but when you're doing a more social experience like what we do, and it's mixing, it's kind of taking what Twitch already does well, which is socializing, and the pacing is a bit slower, and the viewers can actually join in feeling like full players. And it's pretty incredible, because you can just do that from your mobile phone. You don't even need any special equipment. You can just bring up the Twitch app on your phone, just type in a couple of things into the chat, and you're playing the game. You don't need a console. You don't even need to own the game. You're not even paying for it, really. It's a really interesting way to actually put gaming out there, and then you've got the opportunity to start mixing and matching with other media. And I think once you start bringing these streaming apps to people's televisions, for example, you already see what Netflix are doing with their kind of interactive TV. We can start to pull in different things that we like from different media and do gaming in a completely different way. There's just this huge opportunity there when you can run it on a device that does multiple things.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the Twitch connection or the idea of watching and playing games simultaneously is really, really interesting in a cloud world, because you say, Joe, right now there's no way of watching a first-person shooter and then jumping in. But I don't think the technology prohibits it. And I can very much see a future where you are watching your favorite streamer playing something, and you can then click a button, you get invited in, the browser pops up, just like it does with Netflix, and you are immediately streamed into that same session as the person that you are watching. And I actually think, I think we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but cloud gaming opens up a lot of creative opportunities that we're not really exploring very much as a games industry at the moment. There are a few companies that are starting to scratch the surface of it, but I think there's tons we could be doing in the future, a lot of which we can't even quite comprehend just yet, because a lot of the barriers between the various ways we interact with content are disappearing.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there are already things being done, particularly on Twitch. They're bringing out extensions so you can start to do more in the ways that you interact with the games. We saw Mixer tried to do similar things, but obviously Mixer just didn't have the audience. But there's definitely, this is where we're going, and you can see that. And I think the industry obviously need to embrace Twitch more, definitely, and things similar to it, so that we can see more innovation.
Yeah, I would agree. I think from an indie perspective as well, one of the reasons why I'm back in indie gaming is that there's so much creativity and innovation in that space, and I don't think that integration of cloud gaming necessarily needs to exclude small studios. So our first studio that we've signed is a micro studio. It's one person. And he's working on some Twitch integration. So this barrier between, I think before we had, you have interactivity and passive entertainment, you either watch it or you're playing interactive. That's going to start to blend a little bit. So in this first game, it's really interesting that you can watch the game being played on Twitch, but you can start to drop things into the environment and start to change things in real time, which is really fun. It's a little bit like Formula E, where the kind of this blend between the physical and the digital is starting to occur. So yeah, I think there's great opportunities for innovation in the space.
Simon, with you specifically, so because I wanna just change gears slightly. I want to chat a little bit about how do we actually prepare for cloud gaming, as developers and publishers, and in your opinion, when's the right time to actually go into cloud gaming?
Okay, so I'll answer that question slightly back to front and the other way around, because I think what's quite interesting is when we talk about, or the conversation so far about cloud gaming has been about super serving the existing gamer market, and I think the games industry, and that's part of the issue, I think, why cloud gaming's a little bit stalled, because you say the gamer market feels like it has access to the games it wants. I think what's quite interesting about cloud gaming is it actually starts to break down barriers to entrances where we might actually be able to open up the market. And in particular, if we use like Netflix as an example. So, if a game can exist on Netflix platform and it's on demand, it's part of your subscription anyway, people will be much more willing to give something a shot, whether they're a gamer or not. And I think what's interesting about that around the developer opportunity is we need to start thinking about the audience again, and maybe under a slightly different light, because the growth market, I mean, games is gamers play games. And the growth market to bring in new gamers, I would say, is a little bit limited. The growth market to bring in people who are maybe into, say, narrative, for instance, and they're seeing this as a way to sort of, explore a new form of narrative storytelling with new sort of rules of engagement is actually really, really interesting. And I think that is where, as a developer, if we want to take that opportunity, we need to go, okay, so we can break down the barriers to accessing the content, but we also need to think about like accessibility of the experience. These people aren't necessarily people who are like 16-button sort of players and want a hardcore experience. We've also need to think about the type of content we're serving up. And I think the games industry has a really good pedigree in creating like young adult style fiction. But as yet, I haven't seen The Clockwork Orange. I haven't seen Richard Linklater's Slacker, or any of these sort of things, which I think, if you're aiming for the wider audience, we need to sort of get a bit more savvy in terms of the content we're creating as well. So yes, but I think ultimately, if we want to go for this, I think the developers need to be making that shift now, because actually not only does it take at least 18 months to get the game out there, but I think just you need to be thinking, and we need to, as a developer who is sort of, has a business plan, you need to think, well, where am I in 5 years? And so I think like if we feel cloud gaming is an inevitability in 5 years and the market opportunity is exciting, it's like we have to be doing it now.
Yeah. No, totally agree. And do you believe that cloud gaming is going to be its own ecosystem, or are we going to kind of integrate it into what we already have? And following from this, do you think it is sustainable and for a company and possible for a company to actually have a foot in both worlds?
The really interesting thing about cloud gaming, if we think about subscription, is actually the revenue model changes quite a bit as well. I mean, I used to be in television and film 10, 15 years back. And obviously, in that market, you work very much on the sort of the notion of the commission. And the commission pays for your game and some. And I think, like, that's... And then what you do is you hold on to residual IP to try and make money of other aspects. So I think there's something we've got to decide whether we want to bite that bullet as a developer. Do you want the lovely sort of risk reward of multiple people buying your game and then you're getting more money because of it? Or are you happy to be more creator-led in the approach because you want the money to make the best thing you can do and sustain your business in the long run? So I think in terms of that ecosystem, it'll be both, because I think, like, some stuff which is very gamer-focused probably needs to exist in those very gamer platforms. If we're looking for that wider audience opportunity, I think we have to accept that's going to be a more merged ecosystem with the big media entertainment platforms.
Yeah, I always call it the chicken and egg situation with cloud gaming. Content isn't there, but then the platform isn't there, and then what's going to come first, right? I think we had this conversation around, that the audience is potentially kind of a change of which kind of audience we're addressing is actually changing all of this. So that kind of gets me to the last part of the last question of this part of the conversation is like, what's your expectations on cloud gaming when it's finally here? In terms of audiences and...
Well, I think my expectation is it's going to grow the games market massively. I think it's going to widen the
even
size
more.
of the... Oh, yeah, totally. I think the size of the audience is going to continue to grow. And with that, the diversity of the audience is going to grow as well. So we talked a little bit about niche gaming and the opportunity to make games that may not be commercially viable today could be commercially viable either in a subscription model or just because the market has grown and there's demand for different types of content. So for me, I'm looking to see how cloud gaming can help us to open up, let's say, the African market, Pakistan, India, markets where there's just, it's just untapped from a gaming perspective at this point of view and or at this time. And so when you take away the need to spend £400 or £500 on a piece of hardware to sit underneath a television set and move it either to a mobile device or to a thin client with a screen, which could be in a car, or it could be a tablet, or it could be anything, it could be on your fridge, then all of a sudden you've then opened your market incredibly. So I think that's for me is one of the things that I think cloud gaming is going to take gaming to the next level. I mean, it's already the #1 entertainment medium in the world. I mean, we're just way bigger than Hollywood, way bigger than music. This is going to take us to the next level. I think we'll see probably in the next 10 years, the vast majority of the world's population will game in some form or another.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess fridge gaming is the next thing, right?
You can eat and game at the same time. I mean, what's not like that?
This is great. I love it. I see a huge opportunity because the friction of trying a new game is just gone. In an ideal world where you have your subscription set up, you can just click a single button or push a single button and you're in a new game. You don't have to download it, you don't have to install the updates, you don't have to pay for it. It's just there. You can spend 10 minutes of your time trying it. I think this is a huge opportunity for any developer that creates games that are maybe it's not something you would that players would pay $20 for, right? Or that they would spend like half an hour downloading or installing updates or whatever. But yeah, 10 minutes trying it, that's where the opportunity is. Mm-hmm. So just create that juicy content, and I think that will massively open up a bigger market for sure.
Well, there's an interesting thing on there as well, like on-demand, like any on-demand media lives or dies by its first sort of 10, 20 minutes. But what's quite interesting is traditionally games have used the first 10, 20 minutes as a tutorial, which is probably the least interesting thing. So actually again, I think like what people don't realize is the impact on the content is huge. Because you're right, people are just like, no, I'll try something else.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can look at what's happened in the television industry, because you take something like Microsoft Game Pass. It's a small step to say you stream that content, and then a small step to say they break away from the console and you just get it on your television at home. And you're right, it is completely going to change the way we have to think about content, because right now, if I buy a game for 50 quid, there's a barrier to entry that I'm committed, and I'm not going to buy 1,000 games in a month. But if I have access to everything and I can jump at any time, I think, we have to capture imaginations within the first few minutes. I expect we'll see more episodic content or drip-fed content, because people will be more jumping all over the place, so you need to get kind of those messages across in kind of bite-sized pieces. So it's going to be fascinating. I think we will see a very big shift in how we create and deliver content to players.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's said, and I think there's also a lot of design challenges that need to be overcome as well, because we're talking about cloud gaming where you can access it on any device, your phone, your fridge, but how do you design a game that will work on all of those platforms seamlessly? That's a big question, and people are already trying to solve it, but it's still something that isn't there yet. The other thing is the game controller. I find this an interesting thing to consider, because if you've got an app on your television and you're kind of trying to lure people in, if you still need to go out and buy a controller, that's a problem. So are we going to start to see more content that doesn't need a controller? How's that going to work? Is it going to use your phone, your television remote? I mean, we haven't got there yet. We don't know. But I think these are really important questions that are going to have to be answered, and there needs to be a kind of standard. I don't think controllers are going to go anywhere, but I think they're going to become something that you do when you're more into gaming. But I think cloud gaming itself is going to sort of turn everyone into gamers. We won't call people gamers anymore. It's Saturday night. Are we going to watch a movie? Are we going to watch a TV show? Are we going to play a game? You're not going to... That gamer label, I think, will start to fall away. Everybody will be into gaming in some fashion, so...
It's one of the conversations I keep having with people when they say, I'm not a gamer, and I say, well, do you play Candy Crush or something? Yes, well, then you are actually a gamer. I think the whole kind of labeling thing has got very much to do with the audience that we're going to tap into and their own awareness about how much they're actually a gamer and how much they're not, right? So we are actually slightly over time, because I wanted to go a little bit into specifically around Joanna and James, because you are already developing for cloud. So I want to give us a few minutes to talk about this, because I think this is really, really interesting, and also kind of for the audience to hear, okay, so there is already developers out there who do that. And if someone's interested to actually start preparing for cloud gaming, what can they do? So James, why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about, there's a project out there. I know you can't talk much about it.
Sadly not.
But you are already developing for cloud. So what does that look like, and what kind of tip can you give for people that are interested in it?
Yeah. So when I say we're developing for cloud, right now we're not developing for a streaming service or a kind of a Stardew setup. We are building very large online games that require cloud to be part of our infrastructure. And we're interested in that for two reasons. There's a kind of more mundane reason, but it's an incredibly valuable one, which is we want to make sure that when we launch our game, we launch it in the right way. I think anybody who's familiar with online gaming will have seen the challenges when a company under-provisions its servers on launch and you're stuck in queues. I think Lost Ark is currently seeing like 12-hour queues with its popularity. Or you over-provision your servers, you don't get enough players, and you've spent a boatload of money that you're not recouping, and you're in a terrible place, which is why companies tend to under-provision their servers. If you have a game where you can expect your player numbers to go up and down, the parts of the world, your game world in which players are spending their time will go up and down, the density of players will change, the intensity of the interactions will change, then cloud offers the ability to scale up and down as needed, so you're giving your players what they need in the most cost-effective way. So that's something that's massively interesting to us, and we're right in the very early stage of prototyping a new game at the moment. We're going to be working on this for a number of years, but we're prototyping with the cloud because we want to make sure that everything we think about is using it in the right way from day one. The other thing that I find really interesting is going back to the topic we were talking about earlier, which is how can we unlock new creative ideas when we're using cloud technology? And in the AAA space that we're working in now, we think a lot about how can we offload as much of the computational work from the client to the server, to the cloud as we possibly can, particularly in a multiplayer environment where you can solve a very complex problem once for potentially hundreds of players that are experiencing that event at any one time. So physics, artificial intelligence, wide-scale simulation. When you can break your computation away from that client under your desk, it opens the doors to allowing a ton of new possibilities. And as I was saying, I think we're just scratching the surface of that stuff as an industry. And I think we as a company are very much scratching the surface. So it's something that I think it's going to be a long journey for us to work out what we can do. But I think we'll unlock some interesting things as we continue investigating and prototyping over the next few years.
Well, that's all music to my ears, as you probably can imagine. Okay, so before I give the audience the chance to actually ask some questions, I've got one last question for the panel here. And I mean, it goes back to basically the title of our panel session here, right? Do we believe that cloud gaming will conquer the world? And what are you most excited about when it comes to the future of it?
Okay, so there's a slight tangent. I mean, I think one thing that I really like about the potential for cloud gaming is it's better for the environment, right? Right now, we produce like tens of millions of boxes, full of chips which sit under a television screen, and they're not utilized for most of their lifetime. Maybe turned on for a couple of hours a day. I think when we move away from that model to thin clients, most screens have got some processing power in them. And pushing that to the cloud, it means it's far more efficient. So I think that's a really positive thing that is probably a bit of a byproduct from the move to cloud. But I think ultimately the growth of the market's great. I think there are some concerns, particularly I think within indie development and indie publishing, discoverability will remain a major challenge. For anyone that goes to Netflix on a Saturday night, what do I watch? The algorithm's there, it's going to basically provide you with stuff that you've already into. How do you discover new content and interesting, creative content that's coming from smaller providers? We're going to move from the likes of Nintendo, Sony, from being hardware manufacturers to being basically distribution platforms, and that's possibly good, but also is a bit of potential risk as well. But I think if we overcome that, cloud gaming is generally a positive thing for the industry.
Yeah, I think it's just going to improve the gaming experience so much in general, because it feels like the technological advances we've made on games currently is not keeping up with our technology. I installed a AAA game last week. It was about a day before I could actually play it. I had to download it. That took hours. Then there was an update. That took another half an hour. Then when I finally got it booted up, it didn't have one of the actual modes installed by default. I had to download that. And I was thinking, how is this my experience? Yeah. And I've worked in mobile and the importance of retaining people and not giving them any sort of steps to overcome. And it was just, how can this be my experience in 2022? I don't understand. Yeah. And when we can break free from all these technical barriers, waiting 7 years for a new console to come out, and we can just continually improve all the time, constantly, every single month that goes past, we're just going to get such a better experience, and it's just going to keep growing. I think the sky's the limit. There is just nothing we can't overcome.
Yeah, no, totally. And it's also about all of the relapse gamers, where you say the downloading and the time that it costs. I mean, once you get into a certain age, you've got responsibilities. You can't really spend that much time on gaming anymore. So you start kind of, I want to play this game. You spend the first day actually downloading it.
You have to
by the time you actually have the next session that you can actually play, you realize an update is required. Okay, so Simon, your take.
Yeah, I think it is an inevitability. I think it's really interesting the idea of the lapse gamer. The people who were our sort of gaming contingent in the 80s and 90s, and in the millions at the time, now aren't the ones with buying the PlayStations, but do have the inside, the want and the will. So if we give them the opportunity to become gamers again, I think there's a sleeping giant. The other thing which I think will be incredible is at the point that we have on-demand gaming, sort of suggests that my Wi-Fi will be good enough that when my kids come home from school, all of my meetings don't just break down into stutters. So both of those things.
Yeah, internet did definitely not keep up with the pandemic. Derk.
Well, subscriptions are here to stay. I think that's just a given, and I think it's a huge opportunity. And streaming, definitely. I see it as another distribution channel or another way to play. Is it going to take over the world and replace everything else? Not in the near future, I guess. But it doesn't have to, right? It's totally fine to let these things sit side by side. And I think also that having these additional channels available, these additional business models, ways of playing for players, this is just all a really, really good thing for the industry.
Yeah. Well, on the subscription side, though, I'm always thinking, I'm already overwhelmed with what we've got from a TV and movie perspective. We've got Netflix, we've got Amazon Prime, we've got Hulu, we've got Disney Plus. All of these subscriptions also cost money. I mean, my husband actually questioned me the other day, how much do we spend on subscriptions?
Yeah, you don't want to know.
Way too much.
And this is the subscription fatigue is a thing, decision-making fatigue is a thing. If I open up Netflix, for 15 minutes, I just browse and then I just close it. I'm like, no, I'm just not going to do it. And we don't want that for games, right? That's something that we really need to be careful for. But it's I think it's one of the driving forces actually in the consolidation surge that we're seeing these days. And what I hope is that it's going to be a number of mainstream subscriptions that you can just play most games. Like 80% of the total collection of games out there will be available on it, and then you can pick and choose some niche platforms and subscriptions that suit your taste.
Yeah.
I think that would be a good way to move forward.
Awesome.
But I'm an idealist, so maybe I don't know.
So
we all like it.
No, I completely agree. I think we will. I think, again, you look at the television industry and you have your Netflix and your Prime, but then you have your kind of little, smaller streaming services that focus on horror or anime, and they do very well within their niche, so I completely agree. I do think cloud gaming is an inevitability. I think it lowers the barrier to entry, which is always a good thing for business. I think it will bring more people in. I think it's a smart way of hosting any online game, and the games industry is increasingly becoming online, socially driven, community driven. So I can't see many reasons why it isn't happening other than technology barriers, which we always overcome over time.
Eventually.
Eventually.
Right. So this is actually, I'm gonna stop my questions here. So either we got the chance of saying we've made up for it, or we actually give the audience the chance to ask some.
5 minutes late. Are we allowed to? Yeah, let's do it.
Right
I think
then.
The audience and you guys have answered it. I'll just do what you say. You can pick people and I'll.
Well, the question to the audience, as in, do you have any questions for our panelists? We'd love to hear them. Oh, sorry, I couldn't. Sorry, go on.
Thank you. My name is Lydia. One thing I wanted to ask you about is we've talked about cloud gaming really overtaking the market, but not really about the service providers. So if I am a dev looking for that kind of solution, it's quite opaque, there's a lot of actors. Can you tell us a bit more about this?
Have you got the question for a specific panelist?
I don't know, how do you guys would approach, if you're developing for cloud, you need a cloud provider, no? How do you approach this?
I'm not sure I understand. I think I'm struggling a little bit with
the beginning of the question. I didn't really.
Can you repeat this?
Beginning.
Sorry, guys. So my question is, if you want to develop your games on the cloud and it's taking over, how do you approach getting a cloud provider? Because as a developer, I find it quite difficult. There's a lot of choice. I don't really know. Are there things that you pay attention to, for instance, when you're looking to your hosting provider?
Are you thinking more, when talking about cloud, are you thinking more from a kind of streaming service back, so like a Google, a Microsoft, or a Sony, as opposed to an AWS or a Google hoster?
Yeah, like the latter.
Yeah, so if you're looking for a platform holder, let's say you want to get on what Game Pass could be in the future if it becomes a streaming service, or Sony, or Stadia with Google, I think the way of kind of getting on those platforms is still the same way as it has been for the past couple of decades, getting onto a console. It's about getting yourself in front of the decision makers, the account managers at Microsoft, Sony, Google, pitching your game, having a conversation with them, negotiating a business deal. I usually find that those people are hanging around almost every conference, probably. Some might be in this room, but my usual way is just getting to know them at conferences, poking them on LinkedIn beforehand, getting meetings with them, sitting down, chatting with them, getting to know them over a long period of time. I think the longer you're in the industry, you'll just get to know the right faces, and then kind of going down a traditional route of having a chat about what's the business model that works well for both of you.
But that wasn't your question, right? I think it was actually
on the
more
cloud
about
provider.
the cloud backend.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
no worries.
So for me, we've also done a cloud, several games with backend, and we tried several things. The key question is not so much about how much does it cost, but it's more about how much do you want to build yourself versus how much out-of-the-box services do you want to use. So I think that is something you need to evaluate, and if you have backend developers, I think it pays off to build a custom solution for yourself and just work with a generic cloud provider that can do the hosting. If you don't have that, or you're just getting started, then you could consider some of the services that are out there that just provide sort of ready-to-go, out-of-the-box toolkits for games. So that would be sort of a self-assessment. Just keep talking to everybody that provides it.
Shameless plug here, right? AWS is upstairs. So we've got a few really amazing people up there who will be absolutely happy to just help and explore, right? no strings attached.
I mean,
And
I
there's
think-
combinations to make as well, so you don't have to do everything in one thing. And so.
Yeah, I mean, I think having come from that space, what's been really interesting over the last 5 years is just the number of new solutions now available. I think you've got obviously Unity, Unreal, the kind of main engines. They've got their own sort of game back-end services offerings now as well. There's loads of third parties now. So whether it's live ops, Photon have been around for 20 years doing multiplayer. There's just so many choices. So even if you're a single developer making a game yourself, you don't have back-end experience. Again, one of the games that we've signed is a micro studio, 2 people, no online multiplayer experience previously. They're making an online multiplayer game, no problems. They've integrated Photon in 2 months. They'll use AWS, Azure. It doesn't really matter. There are loads of choices. So I think there's really no excuses to adopt that technology now. It's there, available, and it's cost effective as well.
Cheers. Thank you.
Brilliant, and I've been told we better make that the last one for the timekeeping, so sorry, I saw the hand shoot up there, maybe you can grab some of them at the end. But yeah, thank you so much, Marion, thank you for the hosting, thanks to the panellists, thanks to the audience, that's all that.